Hello, my dear friends. Hope you're doing well. In this episode, we're going to talk about adjusting expectations, adjusting to what's going on in the world right now, adjusting to the fact that, at the time of this recording, 6.6 million people filed for unemployment, which was twice what the analysts had expected. Fed officially announces we're in the recession. Like a lot of news, which indicates a change in, and even more of a change in reality, to a confirmation, I think, for what a lot of people, if you've been paying attention to the right sources, kind of knew was coming, knew was on its way. It's more of just yes, the reality that this is a very big deal and that it's changing things. It's now quote unquote official, right? Okay, so if that's true, and it is, what do we do? How do we adjust our goals? Can we expect to hit the same revenue numbers that we had planned to hit in 2020? And if we can't, does that mean we adjust our goals? Where should our mindset be right now? Should we be in a scarcity, reserved, passive, should we still be aggressive in terms of our growth goals? What should we do at this time? Now, I want to answer that question by actually answering a private client's question, because I promised I'd get back to them. But this is a question from Joel. Joel is a private client of ours here in the No Pants Project. He's actually the reason I'm creating this podcast, because it inspired me to share this with you. And I asked him if I could share his question. So he's all cool with that and on board with that. And for those of you who don't know, we have done for you services here in the No Pants Project, where we will build your entire business for you. That's the short pitch. Go to the nopantsproject.com/done for you. So it's all one word. So the nopantsproject.com/done for you. There's a whole video and sales page and everything. We have a few more slots open this month to bring on private clients. But anyways, so back to Joel. So Joel comes to me with this question, and it's a really, really good question. And I'm going to use it, and then I'm going to kind of put it into some context about what's going on right now. But he says, I'd love to get your thoughts on something. I thought I was all set as far as money mindset, and it's something I've worked really, really hard on. So some of you are in the same spot, right? You worked really, really hard on your business. You've worked really, really hard on your mindset, and now everything's changing, and you're like, hold on a second. That's not fair. And look, I'm with you, right? I had gone through a huge amount of mindset training in 2019, lots of planning, and we had huge stuff planned. And then all of a sudden the world's going to, try and keep this family friendly. It's just going to the bottom of the ocean, basically, is what it feels like. Okay. So I get it. I'm with you on that. But he says, however, I heard someone say today that and then I won't say the exact dollar amount because I don't want to reveal any private information about Joel, but he says, if X amount of money per month seems like a lot, then something is off with your mindset, right? Okay, so you guys have probably heard this from some internet marketing Broseph Lamborghini dude who, is saying, if you're not making $100 million a year, you are a loser, right? Which is honestly, that shows that when people say that, when they say if you don't make X amount of money, then your mindset's messed up, just understand that those people have no idea what they're talking about. That one, that's not how money works. And two, they're probably saying it to themselves in public, if you know what I mean. Like they're posting about it because they're trying to convince themselves that it's true. I'm going to go on a side note here. This isn't me actually answering Joel's question, but this is an important side note, and it's something I've been wanting to say. Listen, when times were good, it was important for you to filter out who you listen to. Now that times aren't so great, it's even more important for you to be super careful about who you allow to influence your mind. Okay? And I'm not trying to call Joel out on this one. And so Joel, please don't take it this way. I'm not saying that you tricked yourself or anything like that. But because Joel, let's say, heard that or saw that, whatever, whether it's a post or a podcast or something, it put into his mind doubt That is influence, right? So we sometimes think the only time we're ever influenced by something is if we act on the influence, right? So, a lot of people say, well, I can watch negative shows because I never do anything about it. But there's a step before doing something about it, which is still technically influence. If you watch a bunch of scary shows and then you're always scared, you've been influenced by the scary shows. One of the really crazy things to think about is if you get on your phone and you start scrolling Facebook or scrolling Twitter or just randomly clicking on YouTube videos and you're doing it with no intention, meaning you're kind of mindlessly doing it, then you are by definition just opening the floodgates to be influenced by whatever pops up. So you're sitting there scrolling on Facebook and you scroll upon some fight that, one person's saying the coronavirus is a conspiracy, the other person saying, how dare you think of any other path, just messes of human beings emoting at each other on social media. And because you were just scrolling and letting whatever happens pop up on your screen, then you get influenced by that thing, even if it's a momentary influence, even if it just plants a little seed of doubt, that's still influence. So you have to be careful, is all I'm saying. Now more than ever, because the effects of influence have almost more, the stakes are a little bit higher. And a lot of people's influence is getting a little bit desperate. So it's even, I think some of the people who were questionable in the first place are getting even more questionable. So, for example, I'm not going to say his name because he tends to sue people, but there is a very prominent figure who has touted himself as a really big real estate guru, a billionaire in fact, when what he actually has is more than $1 billion, and he's admitted this recently as a Freudian slip, $1 billion in loans, not $1 billion in owned assets. And his approach to the content that he's created in essentially calming his investors has become increasingly shady. So if you aren't aware that this is happening and you aren't able to see the influence taking place, and you react only to the advice that's given, you can put yourself into a dangerous situation, basically. You can put yourself into a dangerous situation. So be careful of that. I'll give you one more example, and I don't mean to make this episode about bad dudes on the internet, but this stuff really bothers me. It makes me crazy. So, and I think it's just because I've been in this industry for so long, but, oftentimes these coaches or these internet marketing guys, they get kind of a little bit of a following, which in the grand scheme of things, in terms of measuring followings, still isn't that big of a following. And they kind of take on a God complex where they think they know everything. There's this one guy who is also very famous in the internet world. And unfortunately, some of my friends follow him and think he preaches gospel. And I just feel so bad for them because 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, he held this big Facebook Live where he was talking about how this is the worst thing that's ever happened in American history. And this is going to be 10 times worse than 2008. And he was basically spouting off all these half facts. So he would take parts of a fact that would help him build his case as to why this is the worst time ever. And he was building up all this fear, and really smart people I knew were jumping on the bandwagon and in the comments section and be like, oh, you're right, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, wow, this is really scary. This is way worse, way worse, way worse. And then at the end, what do you think he did? He pitched his services. Or not his services, he pitched his course, right? So the guy goes out there, fear mongers around coronavirus, talking about the housing market specifically, which he knows nothing about. I don't know anything about the housing market, and I knew half the stuff he was talking about was total shenanigans. And And so you just have to be careful, because this same guy, here's what's so crazy about influence and how easily people are influenced and how easy it is to gain influence. This guy, what he's known for in the internet marketing world, or like what he sells, is like how to build a team. Okay? And if you go to Glassdoor and you look at the reviews of people who have worked for him and his team, it is one of the worst Glassdoor review pages I've personally ever seen. Like, actually working for this guy sounds like a complete nightmare. Like a complete nightmare. And he touts himself as this great team builder and et cetera and et cetera. So you and this is the guy that's telling you that he knows everything about coronavirus when he doesn't even know how to do the thing he teaches to people. So you got to be real careful about what you let influence you. And again, I'm sorry I took so long to talk about this, but it's going to be so important over the next 30, 60, 90 days. You can't afford to take bad advice. Not now. You got to really filter who you're allowing to influence you. All right, so back to Joel. Sorry about that there, Joel. He says, I'm taking all of this with a grain of salt, meaning somebody telling you that you have to make a certain amount of money. But I do think that amount of money would be nice, considering I've only ever achieved that a couple times before. He says, I have my sets on a much higher goals than that particular amount of money. Eventually, I'd like to be a walking testimonial of your Millionaire Maker program, but it made me think of the one podcast episode you did, he said, about how we don't rise to the level of our expectations and goals. We actually fall to the level of our tolerance. And that's a really good point. Okay, so something to remind you of right now as we're dealing with all of these changes and we're asking ourselves, what is the thing that's going to pull us through all of these changes? The first thing you have to remember is that you don't actually, when times get really hard, rise to your goals. Okay? It's unwise to approach life with that expectation. In other words, to assume that when things get hard, you're all of a sudden going to be way more awesome than you already are. Now, that makes for great fiction, but it's fiction. When the main character, when they're down and out, and things are horrible, and things are tough, and things are hard, they all of a sudden become the superhero, right? They discover their magic powers, and they're all of a sudden... That's a common trope. It's used frequently in fiction, but it isn't reality. What happens in reality is that when things get really hard, and I mean actually hard, not I'm having kind of a bad day, but I'm having a bad month, and I really don't know what to do, and how am I going to get through this? You don't all of a sudden become a superhero. You instead fall to what you are able to tolerate. Okay? Now, we can see this in both the good and the bad. An example of good is many of the people right now that are actively helping others, while they may speak aloud or they may say that they're helping others because, maybe it makes them feel good, or maybe they're trying to come up with an altruistic reason. What's more common in human behavior is that they're helping people because they can't tolerate the idea of other people suffering or other people hurting. Okay? So this idea of falling to your tolerance isn't like a dig on humanity. It's more of an understanding of yourself, to ask yourself, what are you willing to tolerate? Because that's the thing that may need adjusting right now. Okay? So we're going into 30, 60, 90 days, a year or more, 5 years. Who knows how long this is all going to last? If in the past, your business, you tolerated the fact, so I'll give you a great example in our No Pants Project program. And I know I'm probably going to put some people on the spot by saying this, and I do apologize, but one of the things we teach in the No Pants Project is get passive income into your business. Okay? And it's a critical component of running a stable business. You have to have income coming in that you don't necessarily have to do anything, like it's not tied to a done-for-you service. Well, lots of people have gone through our No Pants program, and lots of people have had great success getting clients, building up a strong clientele, and then they just don't really get around to the passive income. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's, I don't know, they don't get around to the passive income piece. Maybe they just like, hey, this is pretty cool working with clients and I'm kind of making a lot of money and this is good enough, right? Their tolerance level is, this is good enough. Well, a lot of people have lost clients recently, and the tolerance level has changed for a lot of people who work with clients to realize I can no longer tolerate a business that doesn't have passive income because I'm feeling the pain now. So when we're looking at, what should we change moving forward in the next 30, 60, 90 days, what we have to look at is not necessarily our goals as much as our tolerance, right? So what am I willing to tolerate? I will tell you my tolerance has shifted even as a business owner. There are things that I used to tolerate when times were good. There are things now I cannot tolerate at all. Now, again, the word tolerate, I think, has negative connotations of like being some kind of diva or something, of being like really demanding of others. What I mean is setting for yourself new minimums. Saying to yourself, you know what, actually, I'm tired of not having an emergency fund. I will no longer tolerate the fact that we don't have 3 to 6 months saved up in personal expenses, for example, right? Now, what does that do? Okay, well, fine, you don't tolerate it, but what? Well, if you truly don't tolerate something, you act to avoid experiencing that thing. So if you're tired, sick and tired of not having 3 to 6 months of expenses, and you truly are no longer going to tolerate that, what you do is you go to YouTube, you learn about how to save money, you start getting books from the library or borrowing them digitally, you start reading blogs about personal finance, you start looking at ways to save, or you start a side hustle, or tolerance is an indicator of action. Aspirations and goals is not necessarily. And that's the big difference. If you look at your life, you will find the amount of action you've taken at your level of tolerance versus the amount of action you've taken at your level of goals and aspirations and vision is probably very, very different. Now, here's the very interesting thing about tolerance, is that you can set your tolerance as high as you want. There's no rule that says your tolerance has to be poverty or that your tolerance has to be misery. You can set a tolerance level of, I have to be this happy. I have to have this much time off. I have to have this much financial flexibility. I have to have this much passive income coming into my business. I have to have these kinds of clients. I have to do this kind of... So again, when we're looking at what are we going to be doing over the next couple of months, now is perhaps more than ever the time to start thinking about your minimum levels of tolerance. Now, I'll give you a piece of advice, which is, might be, I'm talking to Joel now here. Joel, you might find interesting, but I actually do think that all businesses should generate a minimum of $10,000 a month. For me, $10,000 a month in profit, that's after tax profit, is a bare minimum level of tolerance. Okay? When you start introducing team members, in my opinion, honestly, I would be, especially if you're looking at bringing in big team members. So if you're bringing in assistants and things between 10 and 100,000, you're totally fine. But if you're really starting to think about bringing in big team members, you need to have a minimum of $100,000 a month coming in. Now, where do these numbers come from? Am I just pulling this out of my backside? Well, this is just from 12 plus years of running my own business. I have found that those numbers tend to be what you need to not be constantly stressed out. So if it's just you, $10,000 a month seems to be a decent number to be able to live frugally and to put money away. When you have a big team, $100,000 a month at least to be able to cover expenses, to be able to put money away, to save it, etc. And when I say big team, I'm not even talking about corporate teams. I'm talking, 10, 15 people. So I do recommend that there be a baseline of tolerance, but I don't think that that's a mindset issue if you think that that's also a decent amount of money. Because we're not talking about aspirational mindset, we're talking about minimum tolerance. So for me, if you're serious about a business, $10,000 a month after taxes and after all your expenses is what I would recommend be your minimum tolerance level. And then figure out what it takes to get there and then go act on it, because when you're a business owner, and look, I'm going to say some stuff that I know is going to upset a lot of people. And I want to be super clear here. Follow the advice of doctors. Follow the advice of epidemiologists. Follow the advice of the CDC. I am in no way suggesting that any of these measures have been overblown. I think some people in the financial space are saying they're like genuinely considering the economic impact of a shutdown, and they're like, I don't know if it's worth it. And I'm like, dude, have you ever seen somebody die of pneumonia? It's worth it. Trust me, it's worth it. You do not want to see that. But I do think at the same time, both of these things can be true, that it's the right thing to do to have a lockdown and shutdown, but also, yes, a lot of people are losing their jobs, and that's a horrible, horrible thing, but a lot of people are losing their business, which, if you've never been in a position to lose a business, I can tell you from personal experience, if losing a job is on the suckiness factor of 5 out of 10, losing a business is like 50 out of 10. Losing a business can permanently ruin your life. It can put you in really bad places because you've taken on a lot of risk. Most business owners, at least in the United States, are up to their ears in debt. Most of these restaurant owners, they were flying on a thin margin anyways. Most of them were being carried by debt, right? Most of them are liable for the assets that they borrowed against. Very few kitchens own the equipment in the kitchen that they're working in. That's all on debt. It's all on loan. But now they're still going to be held liable for it. So the point that I'm trying to make here is when I give you these minimums, excuse me, it's not about telling you need to be rich. It's more about understanding that as a business owner, you are at a higher risk level than almost anybody else. I understand when people speak ill against billion-dollar companies, but you can't put yourself in that same category and hold yourself to that same standard. If you're a small business owner and you're doing less than $10 million a year, like, you are shouldering a tremendous amount of risk in everything that's going on. So you need to raise your tolerance level because you are exposed at a really high level. So it's about getting as much as you possibly can from your business so that you can stay in business for as long as you possibly can, because the effects of going out of business, they're rough. Even if the only thing that happens to you when you lose your business is mental, that can still mess you up for a very long time. And I know from personal experience, I had a business many, many years ago that failed in a big way. It failed for the customers, meaning we had this great thing going for them, and then all of a sudden we had to shut the doors, and they were kind of left being like, well, what do we do now? But mentally, that's not like losing a job. You lose a job and you're like, screw the management, or, it's the market for it. Like, you can always look to someone else for why you lost the job. When you lose your business, if you're a halfway logical thinking person, it's on you. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I'll admit that one took me a long time to kind of get over. And I would say getting over maybe not even is the right word. It still lingers, right? So we got to raise the minimums. We have to raise our level of tolerance because that's really, really important. Now back to Joel's question here. He says, is my tolerance baseline too low? And he says, and so obviously I would say, I think so. Yeah, you may want to raise your tolerance level just for safety. And then he says, it's really not about the money for me. That's nice and all, but I really just want the financial and time freedom that can accompany the money if I earn it the right way. And to me, the right way is to help others get what they want. Okay. So he brings up a really, really good point. And this is one of the ways that you can help yourself with building up a different tolerance level. The reason I said earlier when those Lamborghini Broseph guys are like, if you don't make $100,000 a month, you're a loser. The reason I said they don't know how money works is because money is a byproduct of something else. That's the most important thing I can teach you in this podcast, is that money is a byproduct of something else. Now, typically, we say money is a byproduct of the value that you add to other people, but it can also be the byproduct of other things. It could be the byproduct of investments you've made. It could be the byproduct of patience, right? If you made an investment a long, long time ago, the longer the more patient you are over time, the more money there is. But as business owners, we typically think in terms of value being added. So I want to call this out specifically because as we transition into these next 30, 60, 90 days, it's important for you to understand that there's a mix between the tolerance level that you're willing to basically absorb and how money works, that when you find the perfect marriage will keep you safe no matter what happens. And it is this: when you can match your tolerance to impact, you will, for the most part, if you deploy smart strategies and don't goof around and be serious about what you're doing, if you match your tolerance to a certain level of impact and you frame everything you do around that, then the natural byproduct, which is money, will never be in short supply. So specifically, if you change your tolerance level from I will never make less than $10,000 a month to I will never add less than $10,000 of value to the people I work with, that subtle change now puts you in a position to actually do something. Because think about it for a second. If I say, I'll never make less than $10,000 a month, Okay. So what does that mean? Is the money just going to fall out of the sky? Or like, that's a great proclamation, but what are you actually going to, like, it doesn't actually provide any information other than you saying, this is what I want. When you say, I will never add less than $10,000 a month of value to the people I serve, now we have a direction. There's a lot of information in that simple sentence. And you can see the information by now raising your tolerance level. So, okay, you say, I'm never going to add less than $10,000 a month to the people I serve. Now you say, I'm never going to add less than $100,000 a month to the people I serve. Or add the value equivalence of $100,000 a month to the people that I serve. This is an informed tolerance position, because when you say, I'm never going to add less than $100,000 in value to the people that I work with per month, it allows you to frame strategies that you can use. It allows you to have constraints. Let me just give you some examples. So if you say to yourself, my new tolerance level is I'm not going to tolerate anything below adding $100,000 a month in value to the people that I serve. Well, that informs a lot of the things you can and can't do. If your goal is to add $100,000, you either need to, if you're going to stick with done for you only, you need to figure out how to up-level your skills to be able to add that kind of value. Or it means by definition, you need to build something scalable into your business. You need to add some passive income. You need to add ways to leverage so that you can offer your services, offer your skills and expertise more than just in one-on-one situations. So if you make it a requirement of yourself that you have to add that much value, then it changes the strategies that will actually allow you to add that much value. Another way to think of it is it creates a theme for processing information. So as you're presented with all these different strategies, right? You're on Facebook and the ads are coming at you. And this ad says do this, and that ad says do this, and this person on social media says do this strategy, and this person says do that strategy. If you don't know what your tolerance level is, okay, and you also don't know what and you haven't reframed the tolerance question to saying this is about adding this much in value versus I need to make this much money. If you think only in terms of I need to make this much money, then almost every strategy seems like a good way to get there. If instead you think of it as I'm going to add this much in value, then it's a filter you can use to judge whether or not that strategy actually would help you to add that much value. Then when you start to get more clear about your tolerance and you say, and I also will only do it without a huge team. Okay, maybe you don't want a big team. So I will do this without a huge team. Well, then guess what that means? It means certain things that require big teams you can't do. But because you have the tolerance, this idea, this vision of what you're willing to tolerate, it informs what actually is going to be helpful to what it is that you're doing. Okay? So to go back to Joel's question, in essence, he says, look, everyone's telling me I need to make this much money. And that my mindset is messed up if that's all I want. And I want that money, but I also really just want like the time freedom and flexibility and what's the deal here? Is my tolerance too low? Like, what am I supposed to do with all this? And then I'm trying to answer him in context of everything else that's going on. And the answer is, one, if you're a business owner, your tolerance level should be at about $10,000 a month. Because that's like a bare minimum for survival as a business owner. But number two, also understand that you're only going to fall to your level of tolerance. You won't raise to whatever vision boarding you're doing unless your vision board is your tolerance level. Number 3, realize you can raise your tolerance level. So you could make a vision board of what your new minimum standards are. And number 4, reshape the idea of tolerance to saying, I will not accept less than this much contribution to people around me. When you get yourself into that mindset, then it doesn't really matter what happens over the next couple of months and years. Because human beings are incredible at not going below their tolerance. We are stubborn about a few things, but when we're stubborn about them, we are very stubborn. If you don't believe me, get a hardcore born-again Christian and an atheist, a hardcore atheist, in the same room and see how that conversation goes. When we set limits on what we will tolerate, we're very good at sticking to them. So utilize that as a tool over the next couple of months and really into the future. It's been a very helpful tool for myself. All right, so hopefully this has been a helpful episode. A bit long as usual. I tend to go on and figure out how to make this stuff shorter for you guys. But hopefully this has been a helpful episode. And for those of you who want help, especially with everything that's going on right now, we are having a lot of really good success in our Done For You service. I've talked to the team, and we have decided to open up our Done For You to more people. So originally, we kind of had this first batch, and we're like, well, we're just going to work with these guys, and that's who we're going to work with all this year. But all things considered, everything that's going on right now in the world, we have decided that we are going to, number one, we hired more people. So our team is bigger now to be able to handle more capacity. That was a decision that we made. So, when I say that the No Pants Project is investing while all this is going on, that's not a joke. Our team is growing at the moment. We're seeing a lot of tremendous growth in the digital space, meaning anything that you can do from home. So if you have services of some kind, if you're coaching, consulting, done for you style services, anything that you can do to help people from basically your computer, and that they can receive from their computer, we're finding that all of those services are actually selling really well right now. And in fact, the cost to sell those things has gone down quite substantially. Maybe I'll do another podcast episode on sort of what we're seeing in the results. But anyways, the point is, now is a really, really good time to build a business that has the passive income, that has the scalability, that has the opportunity for you to leverage what it is that you're good at in a way that also adds a tremendous amount of value. So if you listen to this podcast, you're like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I really do need to set my tolerance level to a different level, but I don't know how to get there. I would recommend that you go to thenopantsproject.com/done for you. It's all one word. There's no hyphens or anything. So it's thenopantsproject.com/done for you. Have a call with Troy, who is he's our chief advisor. It's a no pressure call. Okay. We're not going to try and trick you into anything. We don't want to take on private clients that we had to trick into buying from us. So we are going to have it's a real conversation. So go to the nopantsproject.com/done for you. This is not a cheap service, but we do have funding options. So you don't have to come out of pocket for this either, which again, we're doing that. I mean, now especially, we were doing it before this whole coronavirus thing happened, but now especially, I'm really glad that we partnered with these people to help with funding. So that's the options that we have. We would love to help you. There's lots of cool stuff. There's more information on the page when you go to the nopantsproject.com/done for you. We're probably only going to take on a handful of more clients this month because unfortunately we still do have capacity that we have to deal with. We've hired new people, but new people can't start like on day one. So we've onboarded them and all that kind of good stuff. But we still do have capacity limitations. So if you're looking to, maybe you lost a lot of clients and you're looking to replace some of those clients with better income, better offers, I'll help you to make better offers. We know what's selling right now. We'll do everything. We'll build funnels for you. We'll run your ads for you. We literally do everything. You just have to show up, bring your awesome self, and we'll take you to where you need to go. Now is a really, really good time to help people. So whether we get to work together and done for you or not, remember that your tolerance level, if you inform it through the framework of helping others, you will come out much, much better than before all of this even happened. People will remember what you do for them during this time. So keep that in mind. It's going to be hard because when you're struggling to, or when you're having a hard time, it's very difficult to help others. But I promise that if you do, they will remember. Sort of like the podcast episode I did the other day when we talked about the buy and hold strategy. All right. Anyways, that's it from me. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that you're staying safe and you have a wonderful weekend. And I'll talk to you in the next episode.